Hello and welcome to Mediumship Matters with me, Hannah McIntyre. How are you doing? I wanted to start today by talking to you all about, as the title of this episode suggests, some interesting, in inverted commas, challenging experiences I've had demonstrating recently. Now, I'm aware that when I started season 5, I very much was like, I'm going to do the demonstrations I've got booked in, and then I'm going to step back for the rest of this year. And I am going to step back for a little bit of time, but I've actually really been enjoying my demonstrations this year, and there does seem to be an ease about them which was missing. So long may that continue. Who knows? We're here, we're there, we're everywhere. The only thing we know for sure is that anytime I say I've made a decision about something, the universe will bring me a teaching which makes me doubt that very thing. Yay! So zero clarity. I think that's important to talk about. As a medium, as someone who is very connected to the spirit world, very connected to their spirit guides, I have zero clarity on what's happening next. It's not the way you think it's going to be. Anyway, so I've been doing these demonstrations, and the first thing I wanted to say is, if you are I know we're all developing mediums, but if you are just taking your steps into platform, or you're quite early in your platform journey, I have really noticed recently for myself, there's been a shift, and it's a little spark of hope for you all, because I have spent so long absolutely hemorrhaging energy when I demonstrate, because I'm so nervous, because I'm judging my mediumship. And all of a sudden recently, it's just clicked. And yeah, I'm still tired, but it's not to the level that it has been. And I'm not doubting myself so much. So when I'm giving people evidence and things like that, I'm not constantly, is this good enough? Push for more. How are you doing? Do people look like they're enjoying it? What are you doing? I'm not in that space anymore. I'm just me and spirit, and I'm sharing it, and take it if you like and don't if you don't. So I didn't know that this was a thing that was possible, because as you guys know, I have demonstrated now for solely on my own for a couple of years. And so I thought I was always going to be in that space where there was such a huge cost to me, and it was so desperately uncomfortable. And so to be in this space, and as we know, it may end immediately and I may not be in this space again, but to be in this space right now is quite miraculous. There's almost, you know how in mediumship, we talk about needing a surrender. We say you've got to surrender. And then I just think that's the most ridiculous thing ever, because we know we need to surrender. But being a human makes it very hard to surrender, because to be in a true surrender state, you have no attachment to the outcome, which means you don't care whether you do well or not. And I just don't feel like that's a possibility for me. I don't feel completely detached to whether it's good enough, whether people are getting what they want. But I have started to feel a detachment to the quality of my work. And that doesn't mean that I don't want to be good, but it just means I'm trusting that it is. And that is new. And ironically, of course, that's making my mediumship better. So if you're pushing through on the platform and thinking, oh my God, this is painful, and as I was thinking this time 6 months ago, it's going to be like this forever, here's a little tiny glimmer of hope to let you know that it's not. It's not going to be like this forever. There is going to be an evolution, a movement, a shift. It will continue to grow and shift and change. Now, going from shift to shit in the way that I do. I've had some very interesting demonstrations this year. So last week, week, I was in a venue that I've used a few times. And this again ties in with what I was talking about with the sort of aggressive nature of people at the moment. This kind of, I haven't got enough, I'm going to squeeze, I'm going to pull. Because I had a venue that was £250 rent for an evening. Now, £250 rent for an evening is not the most I've ever paid for a venue, but it is quite a fair amount for a venue. And then for that £250, they told me that they could fit 180 people. Now, we've never actually got to 180 people in that venue. We always sort of land at around 140, 150. And last year when things were difficult, I think we had one night there where it was 100. And after I'd done 2 demonstrations there, they, and bearing in mind, this is a venue that is closed on a weekday night. So this is an opportunity for them to get all the bar sales, lots of people to their venue on a night when normally nobody would be there. So they messaged me and said, because of the chair rent and the costs, we're going to have to put your rent up £100. So nearly a 50% increase. And I was like, oh, okay, never mind. It's a good venue. It's a pretty venue. So they messaged me before I went this time and said, how are ticket sales going? And I said, well, I'm at 120. I'm hoping I'll be able to get to 150. And she messaged back and said, 120 is our maximum. And I thought, have I really dropped a clanger here? I have a spreadsheet with all of the what the venue costs, how many they can seat. And I forwarded her own email from a year ago saying we seat 180. And she replied back with, we don't have enough chairs for 180 people. I have been putting on the booking form 120, so you should have seen that. And I was like, well, I thought you were just putting 120 on the booking form because that's how many I normally have, not because the limit had changed. So I was already a little bit cheesed off before we got there. And they had said, well, we've got 120 nice chairs. If you're not worried about how the chairs look, we've got some extra ones we'll put out. And I thought about it and I thought, no, I won't go with unmatched chairs, but this is very disappointing. But I will I won't tell them I'm not selling the extra tickets, because there's always that bit where people like to leave gaps, and sometimes we're pulling chairs out and trying to rearrange the audience and it gets very stressful. So I thought, okay, we won't have that, we'll just have the extra space. All good, yeah, you'd think? So I get there and there are 80 lovely wooden backed matching chairs, and then the same amount again, not quite 60 I would say, blue disgusting chairs. They look like something that children would sit on school. They're covered in paint and scuffs. They don't match the venue. And I was like, okay. And as I went to say to the staff, well, we'll just put those chairs away, we don't need them, they don't match, I realised that there wasn't 120 of the nice chairs. They hadn't even got enough for what they were telling me was the maximum. So that was the start of me being like, okay, that's really irritating. We had to move all the chairs because they hadn't put an aisle down the middle. So they were expecting people to sit in rows of 10 with the people who would be in the centre sort of trapped. So we moved all the chairs, got all that done. And then the dem started, and it was a really good dem. I'm proud of my work. I felt like the audience were really on my side. It was really good fun. But do you know, guys, during that dem, the staff, because the bar is in the room, the staff, the manager of the venue was having a chat with his staff so loudly at the back of the room that I had to, from the stage, ask them to be quiet. And I had 4 or 5 times where their phones went off during my dem. So as you can probably tell from that, I'm a little annoyed. And I am now going to look for another venue because that's just absolute, £350 for 4 hours rent of a venue when they're also getting bar sales, and they are not even being professional. And I'm telling you that not because I just like to moan, but I'm telling you that because I think these are important things to talk about. When we're developing, I remember wanting everything to be deathly silent. Any sort of vibration, cough, anything like that would pull me out of my power. And now I understand the real importance of being able to work when there is noise. Because audiences generally aren't quiet anyway, but there is always something that is a distraction. When I first started working with one of my mentors, they were telling me off for closing my eyes when I demonstrated. They told me it's an absolute no-no in mediumship if you want to read with a sitter. And I do completely agree with that. And it's something that I teach my students. And it's really, really important because energetically, if you've got your eyes shut, you're just having this experience. It's you and the spirit, and you're forgetting about the most important aspect, which is the sitter. So whether you demonstrate to an audience or whether you work one-on-one, you need to keep your eyes open. And at the beginning, you do feel like you've taken a step back in your mediumship. It's not as good as it was because as soon as you open your eyes, you're overstimulated. You can see stuff around the room. You don't feel like you can do it. And you have to kind of go through that process of going, I feel like I'm right back at the beginning. Allow that process to take place. And then you will come out the other side and realise that it's really important and worth it. It's definitely important in an audience scenario because they want to feel like you're engaged with them, like you're interested with them. So talking of distractions, it leads me to a real shit show, which was so funny. I was at one of my favourite venues in Faversham. It is the old brewery store. It is just beautiful. It's really funny. It's like a museum of the history of the brewery with a function room that is beautiful and yet simultaneously like a warehouse. And it's just a very sort of quirky, unusual space. And Kim and I were really looking forward to going there because it is always a really good night there. This night was quite a challenging night there, and I really wasn't expecting it. So we arrived, people were checking in, someone came out of the loos, said the loo was blocked. I went and got the manager, and it turned out that the toilets were backed up. Now, when Kim and I arrived, we had been setting up by the stage and I had said, I can smell poops. And I said, there's a drain in the corner of the room. It was under a piece of wood. I did not know that drain was there, right next to the stage. And I went, I think they might need to put some bleach down that drain. Didn't think anything more of it until the toilets backed up. And then I thought, okay, there really was a problem. I should have trusted my nose. Anyway, they couldn't get an emergency plumber out and they were really helpful. These things happen. There's nothing you can do about it. They shut the toilets, they opened the disabled toilets and they cleaned and then opened the staff toilets for us. It would have been the ladies as well. When 89% of your audience is female and take longer, it would of course be the ladies that broke. But never mind, that's life. Now, because people were arriving and being told the toilets were out of order, it ended up being one of the most disruptive demonstrations I've ever done. Because as soon as people who'd sat down, it wasn't their fault, they hadn't been able to have a wee on arrival, they saw someone go and use the toilet and come back, and then we must have had 50 people up and down during the show going to visit the toilet. Now, it's not their fault. I get it. I get wanting to arrive and use the loo. I completely understand that. But oh my God, did it make it hard for me to work. So we had that sort of in and out disruption. They were very well behaved. They followed my rules. They came and they left and arrived in between links. So not during my actual experience, apart from a few people. So it could have been much worse. Then we had 4 glasses kicked over and smashed during my dem. Never had that. Then we had this malodour of poop clouding the stage. I honestly, guys, I mean, I'm laughing about it because it was hilarious, but it's really off-putting because it's a disgusting smell to be able to keep working when you are trying to have this energetic experience with spirit and you keep smelling feces. And the front row, who paid for front row tickets, can smell feces. I thought the onions were bad in the other place, but actually, who knew that there were new depths we could reach in my demonstrations where we would be like, okay, I thought that was the pinnacle, but actually it's this. Who knew? Who knew that that was available to us? I mean, honestly. So we had all of that. And then I also had an audience that was quite experienced. They'd all seen nearly, I reckon 70% of them had seen mediums before, being what I would call really badly behaved. It was really interesting. So you're halfway through a link with somebody and they're saying yes to everything, and then you suddenly get someone put their arm up and they're really making a fuss and really waving, and you say, okay, sorry, did you need me? Because it's so disruptive and so pulls you out of your focus with the spirit. And they say, I think you might be with me. And I say, oh, okay, can you understand everything I've said then? And they say, well, not this, not that, not this, not that. And you have to go, okay, well, this lady I'm working with can understand everything I'm saying, so I'll just stay with her. Thank you. And I've never had an audience for it. And it was so weird because they're an experienced audience. So if they're, it's kind of understandable if the audience is all people that have never seen a medium work. But in that space, I don't know. It was very weird. So it was very stop-start. I had this one moment where I'd got a grandmother through and she was showing me Lilliput Lane cottages. They're like ornaments of ceramic cottages and they all have different names. And I knew that those ceramic cottages were important. And I offered it out. First of all, no one took it. I went through all my evidence. I said, I stand by it. She's here for somebody. And then we had 8 hands up. And I tried to go to one and I tried to go to another. And they were all like, well, I don't understand it as grandma. She wasn't that age when she passed. I don't understand the cottages. I don't understand this. I went to another one. I don't understand this. I don't understand this. So basically, you've got grandma in spirit and I've said grandma and nothing else that I've mentioned resonates with you at all. And it got to the point where I had loads of people putting their hands up and I just said, okay, only keep your hand up if you can understand every single thing that I have said. Every single thing. All the hands went down apart from one. And I just thought, bloody hell. Doesn't matter how much you educate them, how much you explain stuff to them, you know. I also had some ladies. Now, I know that they didn't know better, but I just want to share this because this is what it's like being a demonstrating medium. They came up, they'd had a book signed. They wanted to get their book signed. They'd bought a book, which is fab. And they'd had the first link of the night. Now, obviously, at the end of a night, I barely remember what I've said. I'm exhausted. I made the biggest faux pas ever when I was answering questions, when I called a lady in the audience a man, And it was mortifying. And the reason why I did it is because I was so tired that my contact lenses had dried out of my eyes and I couldn't actually see. But of course, that didn't make it better. Oh, I think I was just panicking after the stress of standing in poop stink. Yeah, I kept thinking, everything you smell, you're also tasting. It's like proper molecules, which is not a helpful thought. And I've now shared it with you, so you're welcome for that. And I was just grossing myself out. Anyway, these girls came up to me at the end. Now, when I came to them, I'd already said to the audience, as I always do, I need your voice. I need you to answer me. I need you to respond. It's part of the energetic process. And when I went to them, they both became virtually mute. And that's okay. I understand that. I understand that it's nerve-wracking. I understand that it's a lot. I also understand that if you don't answer me properly, there is a limit to what I can achieve in my mediumship. And that is the way it is. There's nothing I can do about it. So for them to come up to me at the end to tell me they were dissatisfied because they felt like there was more I should have been able to get when they hadn't answered me was challenging to receive. And this is what it's like. You can educate people, you can explain how it works, but if they don't get it, they don't get it, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that was a really interesting evening. I also want to share just a couple of spirit stories with you. The first one I'm going to share is actually about something I got wrong at the first venue, because I always think there's more value in the stories of what I get wrong than me showing off about my best bits. But there you go. Anyone can talk about the times where they were amazing. I think it's more valuable to talk about the times that you weren't. So I had a gentleman step forward, and unusually for me, I couldn't tell the difference between him being dad or uncle. I couldn't separate it. And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, well, maybe I've got cousins in the audience and it's dad to one of them, uncle to the other. And I knew that this man passes age 57. He's a keen cyclist. Cycling's really important to him. His passing is shocking because he's at peak physical fitness and really enjoying his life. There's no symptoms. He passes from a cut on his left leg, that leads to sepsis. Now, pretty specific. I was pretty proud of that evidence. I'm not going to lie. It's not always like that for me. And that, I was in my power. I ended up with this girl and her mother in the audience who were like, nah, all the, they were, nah. And she asked me if it was dad or uncle I was communicating with, and I felt, or if they were both there. And I felt into it, and it felt like only one spirit, and it felt like it was uncle more than dad. So I shared that with them, and they went, and I couldn't get it going. And I did my best for it. I passed on the message. She came up to me at the interval. So her uncle was elderly when he passed, but he died from a cut on his leg and sepsis. Her dad was a keen cyclist who died at age 57, and cycling is a massive thing for him. Suddenly, unexpectedly, the cycling was important because there was cycling involved in his funeral. They had it as part of it because it was such a passion for him. And I said, well, God, I'm so sorry. I'm so glad you've been able to work that out. I wish that I could have realised it was two spirits. And I sat with spirit afterwards and talked to them about it. And it was only one spirit, but the uncle was trying to also communicate on behalf of the dad. Now, I have to be honest and say I've not had an experience like that before. I've not felt into the energy of that before. Hopefully now it went a bit creaky this time. I'll be able to do it next time. But I wanted to share that with you guys as a possible potential when you're opening up and expanding and trying to feel into things. Because it doesn't always work the way that you expect it to. And I'm not devastated by this. I think old school me would have been absolutely devastated that I hadn't got that right. I'm not devastated by it because I still think I did bloody well on that evidence. I still think that was really specific evidence. It's just a shame I didn't assign it to the right spirit, and that's how things can fall apart. At the poopy venue, I had an interesting one where I was working with a lady that had passed. She had a long-term illness, but then she caught a virus and died from that after having her long-term health complaint. And I got everything right. I was working with the sitter. It was yes after yes after yes after yes. And then I said, she's talking about flowers. Are you going to give her flowers? There's something to do with flowers. And they said, no. And I went back to the spirit and went, what have I done? And she gave me flowers. And I said, I don't know what this is. There's something to do with flowers. It's really important. I said, they're pink roses. And the girl said, I've got pink roses on my windowsill at home, but they're nothing to do with my mum. And I went back to the spirit and she said, nope, not that. And I said, nope, not that. And I said, there's something you haven't done flowers for your mum following her passing. It feels like in honour of your mum, there were pink flowers. And she said, my mum hated flowers. And everybody laughed. And I was like, why would she bring in something that she hated? So then I'm like, okay, I also want to talk about how you're wearing her perfume. There's a connection with perfume. You wear her perfume to remind you of her. And she said she hated perfume. And I went, oh my God. And everybody laughed. And I was like, why am I getting things that this spirit hated? And then she said, but my friends are here and our mums are both in spirits and our mums were friends. And this girl waved to her hand. She was next to her. And she said, I'm wearing my mum's perfume tonight. And I said, okay, she's obviously just saying hello, letting you know that they're together and they're around. But I still feel like I'm with you and I still can't move these flowers. Anyway, I had to let it go, moved on, finished it, really, really good. I was heading to the toilet in the interval, and as I walked past that girl, she was crying and she said, I just want to say thank you so much for that reading. That meant so much to me. And that's fine. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm sorry about the flowers. And she said, oh no, we've worked that out. And she'd brought her mother's order of service with her. And around the picture in the centre of the order of service was, you've guessed it, pink roses. So that really helped me because it's that thing, isn't it, of trusting. People are saying no and you're there. I mean, why they put on an order of service flowers if the mother hates flowers, I don't know. But what a great message from spirit. What a great bit of evidence that they weren't aware of. And I had to trust into, and that mum was very determined. She wouldn't let me change it. I felt really strongly that I was with it, only for it to make its sense later. So 2 kind of interesting experiences, I think, where you are navigating mediumship, and this is what it's like. And the trouble is, I think, when you start, no's are the worst. No's pull you out of your power. No's make you doubt your ability to do this. No's hurt. I mean, no's used to physically hurt me. It was like I'd been stabbed in the chest and it was so painful, and it would pull me out of my power, and then I wouldn't be able to do it, and I'd be completely in the human space of looking at everybody and feeling like a failure. But no's will always be a part of mediumship. And actually, if I'm honest, Sometimes it's the no's that end up being my most impressive bits of evidence, because just like that girl with the order of service, it's kind of mind-blowing as a bit of proof that the spirit knows, that the spirit sees. And yeah, so although I would prefer in my ego space to look good in front of an audience, there's no doubt I would prefer to get nothing but yeses. I also really appreciate the cleverness of spirit that knows that become yeses later. They have a certain magic about them. And maybe it's just that bit of magic that spirit, that sitter needs. And I don't want to get in the way of that, because that's the cool stuff. But also I don't like no's. So find that space in there. So if you're developing, your job is not to stop getting no's. Your job is to get so many no's that they don't have a power over you anymore. That's the most important part of your development. It's not getting no's, it's being able to cope with it, being able to trust your mediumship anyway. It's being able to stand up in front of somebody, or sit down if you're doing a one-on-one, and them say no, and you say, I can't change it, it is what it is, and holding that space. And when they give you a sort of vague lifeline to be able to get out of it, being strong enough in yourself to say, no, it's not the flowers in your house, it's something else, to make it better. And that is massively underestimated, I think. I think we want an easy path, because of course we do, because it's a painful path, mediumship development. But this is also the only way to get you to where you need to be. There's no shortcut to that. There's no non-painful way to take the pain out of no's. You have to just grow a callus so it doesn't go so deep. And then that callus becomes harder and harder. And then you realise that actually a lot of the no's that you get were actually yeses. And this is the thing. I reckon that about 90% of the no's I get become yeses later. And that's startling, isn't it? Now, the other 10%, I am wrong. I can accept that. I have no problem with that. You're doing an energetic experiment. You're reaching into an invisible space to perceive an energy that's beyond your normal human senses. You are going to get things wrong. You are going to make stuff up. You are going to get in the way of it. You are going to imagine stuff that is not from spirit, but it's just a little brain burp. That is par for the course. But actually, it's quite staggering to me, as I've grown in confidence and belief in my own abilities, how many things I haven't allowed to be watered down, and how many times I haven't been able to go, well, I'm taking that back, I obviously made it up, and I've just gone, no, it is what it is, for it to be right. The first person that tried to take that Lilliput Lane lady, she could take everything but cottages. She could take other ornaments, but not cottages. And as soon as she said that, I was like, no, because I'd forgotten about Lilliput Lane. I'd forgotten about the branding of it, the name of it. It's never anything I have ever seen anyone I know have. It's not to my personal taste. Like, it was so far removed from where my brain would be that I knew it was from spirit, and I knew that it was right. And actually, that was key in finding the right sitter. And it's hard to be in that space. It's hard to be in a space when you are in front of a room full of people going, I've got Lilliput Lane Cottage, and somebody says, I can take lots of ornaments, ceramic ornaments, but not cottages. They were other things. And holding that space where no one else has got their hand up, where you say, no, it has to be this. But that's where good mediumship comes from. And if I could do anything and go back to me when I was first developing, I perhaps would explain this to myself, because I felt like all of the no's were signs that I wasn't good enough, that my mediumship wasn't good enough, that my connection wasn't clear enough. Potentially that spirit didn't want to work with me, and they were letting me know that they didn't want me on the team by letting me get things wrong, because I had such a lack of understanding of the intricacies of offering stuff to people through their filter of what they would expect to receive from that spirit of evidence versus what you're actually able to receive from that spirit as evidence. And the space in between where you try and find a place where it meets. And that is hard. If you've got somebody there that is like, if my nan comes through, she's going to talk about her son that's in spirit and the locket of hers that I always wear. But my valves are actually only open to how she passed, how she liked to spend her time, and memories of the two of them together. It's not that sitter's fault that they've got expectations about what their grandmother would bring in, but it's also not my fault that I'm not able to perceive those things that they want in this moment. And finding that space of being true to your mediumship and what you are perceiving and what you are receiving versus what sitters want you to receive versus gaps in their knowledge and things they've just forgotten about in a moment. That's the job. It's hard, but it's also kind of amazing. I feel like the last 2 weeks of demonstrations have been shit shows for various reasons, but they've also brought back to me the wonder of it, the magic of it, the cleverness of it, the mind-blowingness of it. How absolutely incredible spirits are. So I'm going to step away from this bit of the conversation, and I'm going to just move quickly to a couple of listener questions because I've got so many of them to answer once more, which I'm really grateful for. So first up, I've got an email from somebody who wants to remain anonymous, so they will. But I'm going to scroll down to their question, which is, she's talking about her daughter. The parents are separated, and her ex-partner wants her daughter to attend an event that she doesn't feel like she wants her daughter to go to. And she has like a foreboding feeling, and she's worried about separating intuition from fear. Where is it? Where's the line? And this is the question, isn't it? And I don't really know if I can fully answer that for you, because our emotions do completely override our feelings, our intuition. And so I'm just thinking of, so the other day, my husband and I went away for a weekend. It was our first time going abroad and leaving our teenage children. And we were very excited about it. We went away and we had an incredibly magical time. It was amazing. And while we were gone, some members of our family came to our home and helped themselves to some stuff out of our shed without asking. And I felt really affronted by that. They weren't just borrowing stuff, this was stuff that they used up. And the problem is with them using it up, if we need to do any repairs, we're not going to have matching things now. And it just really upset me. It really upset me that they did that. Now, I know that they are not bad people. I know that they didn't think it was necessarily a bad thing to do. I get all of that, but it really was a trigger for me. I have a bit of a weird habit of liking to keep things in stock. And I'm not a hoarder, I'm really not, but maybe a little bit. I like to have backups of things. I think it's from when we had real financial struggles. It just makes me feel safe to know that there is a backup of something. So I always have backups of everything: toothpaste, shower gel, shampoo, conditioner, deodorant, face cream. I don't know what it is. I just like to know that I've got another one waiting in the wings. I accept that that is probably a bit odd, but I also accept that I'm allowed to be odd, and it's my home and I can live how I want in my home, and I shouldn't expect people to come in and take things from my home when I'm not there. And I really had this massive reaction to it, emotional. It was this huge outpouring. And then I pulled cards because I really just wanted to put down a boundary and cut people off. And that was that. They were never welcome in my home again. And I pulled 2 cards, and they were both basically negative thoughts surrounding into real fears, let it go. And I went, oh, but I also knew that that was right, and that there's no point blowing apart a relationship over something like that. Yes, I'm going to be a bit more mindful with my boundaries, probably a little less of the people-pleasing version of Hannah, where I'm more worried about everybody being comfortable and having a nice time. That has obviously made them feel too comfortable. But an interesting lesson nonetheless. And so in answer to your question, Anonymous, this is the problem, because it's hard when you're having a big emotional reaction to something to get a good read. And I think we just have to accept that that is how it is. So it could just be that you really get a bad feeling from your ex-partner for good reason. I know you've put more detail in the email, and so you are worried about that for a good reason. It could be that your instinct is saying it's absolutely the right thing to do, but it could also be not. And the best advice that I can give you, because this is your child, is just to err on the side of caution and not damage anyone else from your feeling, but follow your feeling, trust your feeling. And this is the thing, you feel how you feel, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. Whether it came from spirit or it's coming from you, you still feel how you feel. And I feel that that is valid. I still feel a little violated. I'm not going to burn everything to the ground like I was going to earlier this week in my absolute lava-filled rage. But I am a little bit more careful now, and I recognise that, and I understand it. So finding that space. So an answer but not an answer, but I always try to answer everything and not shy away from anything. I hope that that helps. Then I have another question from Sarah, who wants to know how it is that we can reincarnate but be available in the spirit world to be able to do evidential mediumship with, pass on messages, that kind of thing. And I think that I know this is a limited way of looking at it because this is the best my brain can do. But if you remember that the spirit world exists outside of time and space, so in the spirit world, you are already reunited with your loved ones. The separation is part of the illusion of this physical experience, not the reality of the spirit world. So you can be everything all at once in the spirit world, but also just take it like only part of you incarnates here. It's not the whole of your soul that incarnates, it's just part of it. So you can communicate with that part of a soul for an evidential reading while another part of that soul is off living another life. Does that help? I hope so. Right, there we go. I'm going to leave the rest of the questions for the next episode, but thank you all very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will catch up with you again soon.